If you rewind back to 12 months ago, Max Verstappen was in a position that every driver longs to be in at some point during their career. He had the best car, he had won 3 of the first 4 races, and he comfortably led the championship. But it's amazing what can change in the space of the year, as here we are again after 4 races, but instead this time around, Max is not leading the championship, he does not have the best car. In fact, his car is way off the pace, it handles like a pig, and were it not for his sheer brilliance in Suzuka, he wouldn't actually have a win to his name. It's been quite a turnaround for the reigning world champion, because there he was winning every weekend, breaking record after record. It seemed like nothing could go wrong, and then suddenly bam, there he is now in a position where he's just fighting to salvage a points finish. The second half of 2024 really tested Max's nerve, as Norris and McLaren really piled on the pressure, and it was only really until Brazil, when Max put together probably his greatest ever drive, that he managed to all but wrap up that world title. But that vulnerability has carried over to this year. The only difference this time around is that he isn't the one being hunted. Instead, this time around, Verstappen is trying to be the hunter, with McLaren firing out of the blocks so far this season. But even with Max's generational talent, that won't be enough to stop those papaya cars running away with the title. His realisation that he may not be able to actually defend his crown, coupled with certain things that he's not happy with that are going on behind the scenes at Red Bull, have suddenly called into question Max's future at the team. So with a car that's underperforming and a team that is at risk of collapsing, is the Red Bull dynasty on the verge of coming to a shuddering conclusion? Well, let's start by looking at the season as a whole so far. If you look at Australia, the first race, Max pretty much got everything there was to get out of the package. You know, he qualified third behind both McLarens, and then in difficult conditions in the race, he only finished less than a second behind Lando Norris at the flag. China proved to be a much tougher test because Red Bull never really had the pace to challenge for victory there, yet Max managed to get some good points out of the weekend. He finished third in the sprint and then finished fourth in the main race. But it was at Suzuka where suddenly Red Bull's fortunes changed, and it was almost like the car was reborn there. But I think their surprise win was more down to Max's talent than the RB21 itself against the faster McLarens. And then finally Bahrain, which proved to be Red Bull's most difficult weekend of the season so far, because not only were they the clear 4th fastest team, at times over the weekend and in the race, they even struggled to match the pace of the midfield teams below them. From the outside, it actually doesn't look that bad if you look at Max's position in the Drivers' Championship after 4 races, because he's only 8 points off Norris and 5 points behind Piastri, which, considering that McLaren have got a much faster car than Red Bull, I would say is pretty astonishing. But like it did at the end of 2024, Red Bull is having to completely rely on Max's brilliance to keep them in the hunt with faster teams ahead of them. And as good as Max is, that just is not possible over a 24 race season. I mean, where would Red Bull be without Max in the car? I think it's actually quite scary to think about, because I don't think Red Bull are prepared for the post-Verstappen era. They're trying to do anything and everything they can to keep him happy and make sure that he sees out his contract. But that's the thing, Max isn't happy, and why would he be? You know, he's won the championship the last 4 years, 2 of them comfortably, and now he's in a position where a championship bid for this season looks actually a bit of a stretch with the car that he's got. I mean, Max loves racing, that's clear, but he loves winning more, and if he doesn't have the opportunity to win, that he simply will not stick around, because success is what drives him. So Red Bull's poor start to the season has reopened the debate about Verstappen's future with the team, and this is not a new story, because speculation about this sort of began last year, initially with Horner's scandal surfacing at the start of the season, then Newey left, and then Red Bull's form dipped. So where's this latest speculation come from? Well, believe it or not, it's actually come from Red Bull itself, specifically Helmut Marko, who, when speaking to Sky Germany after the race in Bahrain, admitted that he was quite concerned that Max could choose to walk away from Red Bull. Marko said the concern is great. Improvements have to come in the near future so that he has a car with which he can win again. We have to create a basis with a car so that he can fight for the World Championship. Now, Marko's comments ironically came after he faced a full-blown rant from Max's manager, which was initially reported by Sky F1's Ted Kravitz. And given the likelihood that this will be true, that to me is a clear message from Max's camp of, this is unacceptable, we will not stand for this to continue, or we will assess our options. But an uncompetitive car cannot be looked at as the only reason why Max would choose to leave a team that he's won all of his 4 world championships with, won all of the 64 Grand Prix that he's won so far in his career. You also have to look at the high-profile departures that Red Bull has suffered over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, because it really has hurt them, particularly Newey's last year, but also Jonathan Wheatley, who of course left his role as sporting director. He's now headed up the Sauber operation. He's now their team principal. And of course, Rob Marshall, whose expertise and experience is now rubbing off on McLaren. Other than that, Max was quite vocal in his disapproval over Liam Lawson's brutal demotion after just 2 races. That, I think, again, further dented his relationship with the team. So, with everything that has happened, we really do have to consider what Max's options will be if he chooses to leave the team. This isn't the first time that he's been linked with a move away from Red Bull, because if you remember going back to last year, this is where it all started, when a move to Mercedes became a real possibility. But in the end, the team chose to go with Kimi Antonelli, and so far they've been proved right to do so. So with Mercedes out of the picture, because it's believed that George Russell was going to re-sign with them for at least another 2 years, the only other real viable option is Aston Martin. Now, if you go by the reports from 2024, they are not afraid to offer Max the big bucks in an effort to persuade him to join the team, where of course, if he did join them, he would once again link up with Newey. The only problem is that both Alonso and Stroll are contracted for next season. But if you have Max Verstappen available, are you really going to turn down that chance to sign him? I don't think so. There is of course the possibility that Max decides in the end, you know what, I'm actually going to stay at Red Bull, because of course he does have a contract until the end of 2028. But we also know that that contract does include some performance clauses. And my suspicion is that if Max finishes lower than 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, or if Red Bull finish lower than 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, he would be allowed to speak to other teams and leave. I don't think a sabbatical can be ruled out either, or maybe even a switch to the World Endurance Championship, because Max has talked about this a lot in the past, about how he'd love to race at Le Mans at some point in his career when he's done with Formula One. For me, Max's patience is wearing thin. Red Bull have got to act fast, and they've got to act now if they're going to keep their star man. Otherwise, this whole dynasty is going to be broken apart, and it's going to leave them with a massive void to fill. Well, there you go guys, that's it for today's video. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on today's topic in the comment section. And if you are new around here, don't forget to like the video, and please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.